it's great to be back in Liverpool for this year's Labour Party conference. A city with a global reputation for its creativity, history and diversity.
Liverpool's bursting with pride, politics and people who put our country on the map. This year, we've chosen the Mayor's Hope Fund as our charity partner for annual conference.
The Mayor's Hope Fund is a wonderful charity established by Liverpool's Labour Mayor, Joe Anderson.
Joe set up the Mayor's Hope Fund to support the charities who reach out to those in Liverpool who've been hardest hit by 8 years of brutal Tory austerity.
20,000 people in the city rely on food banks, and almost half of these are children.
Since 2014, the Mayor's Hope Fund has distributed over £200,000 to support families in poverty,
including donating 1.5 tonnes of food to the Trussell Trust Food Bank network and providing a hot Christmas dinner to over 200 families last year.
They've also supported more than 3,000 asylum seekers across Merseyside, supported hundreds of families to cook healthy and affordable meals at home,
and provided food to children affected by domestic violence through local charity Centre 56.
Let's show Liverpool what the Labour Party's made of.
Together, we can ensure the Mayor's Hope Fund will deliver a little bit more hope to the people of this great city.
You can support this vital charity by donating online, by text, or via the collection buckets you'll see around the conference centre.
Whatever you can donate, big or small, would be a wonderful contribution.
We're proud to stand with the Mayor's Hope Fund, and we hope you'll stand with us too.
Conference, please welcome the chair for this session, Ian Murray, and the Platform Party.
Morning, Conference. Welcome to this session where we'll be debating Brexit and the economy, including speeches by Keir Starmer, Rebecca Long-Bailey. We also have a number of rule changes to consider. Before we move on to the CAC report, I will ask the Chief Scrutineer, GEMMA BOLTON, to report the results of the ballot of the election of the auditors, which was held yesterday.
Comrades, GEMMA BOLTON, Chief Scrutineer. I will now report the results for the election for the National Auditors to serve a term of 2 years, which was held yesterday. 2 members to be elected by all delegates to conference. There is no gender requirement. The actual votes cast are as follows. Chris Kitchen, 2,322,266. John Paul McHugh, 223,572. Steve Jennings, 2,179,589. I therefore declare that Chris Kitchen and Steve Jennings are elected. Thank you, Conference.
Thanks, Gemma. We will now take the report on Conference Arrangements Committee, so please welcome the Chair of the Committee, Harry Donaldson.
Chair, Conference formally presents CAC Report 3. Today we have debates on the composite motions on Brexit and the 2 composite motions on government contracts. These will be debated this morning. The composite motions on Windrush and Palestine are timetabled for debate this afternoon. Contemporary motions to be debated today are detailed in CAC 3 on pages 13 to 19. The emergency motion on Royal Liverpool Hospital is timetabled for debate tomorrow and for reference can be found on Appendix 3 on page 41. Constitutional amendments will also be debated today with card votes taken at the end of the afternoon session. CLP constitutional amendments can be found on pages 20 to 29 of CAC 3, with details of card votes on page 12. The CAC has ordered the constitutional amendments by position in the rulebook, and where one constitutional amendment would have a consequence on another, has put the most wide-ranging constitutional amendment first. If the first constitutional amendment is passed, the following constitutional amendment will fall. This is detailed on page 20. Please ensure that you have your card vote booklets with you for the votes at 17:25 this evening. CSE 3 contains the result of the national audit ballot conducted yesterday and announced this morning. These are contained in Appendix 5 on page 47. Please note that whilst the percentages are correct, the votes cast have been reproduced incorrectly in the printed copies, and the correction will be printed in CAC 4. Online versions of the reports are correct. CAC 3 also reproduces the full details of the priorities ballot from Sunday on page 49, following an incomplete set being printed in CAC 2. And apologies for these errors. Today the ballot takes place for Division 1 and 3 of the National Constitutional Committee. The Division 1 ballot is open to trade union delegates, and the Division 3 ballot is open to CLP delegates. There is also a ballot for the Conference Arrangements Committee Division 1, which is open to all delegates. Ballots are open between 9 a.m. and 5:30 p.m, with the results being announced tomorrow. Details of the candidates can be found on pages 30 and 31, with the candidate biographies on pages 31 to 40. Trade union delegates should note that Jane Butcher has been withdrawn from the NCC election, and so Ruth Hayes is elected unopposed, as one position must be filled by a woman. Today's ballot therefore takes place between the two remaining nominated candidates, Mick Kearney and Doug Fairbairn. Advertised by-elections for the NCC Division 1 trade unions and NEC Division 1 trade unions will not take place, as the vacancies have been filled by candidates elected unopposed. The details of the successful candidates can be found on Appendix 5 of page 47. The NEC has agreed to reopen nominations for Division 2 trade unions of the National Policy Forum. Nomination forms and candidates' consent to nomination forms will be available from the ballots office from 12 noon today. It's 25th of September, and must be returned to the ballots office no later than 4 p.m. today. If required, the ballot will be scheduled for Wednesday, 26th of September. A two-day agenda can be found on page 51, with a detailed agenda for today found on page 4 to 6. Following delegate requests, the times for debate on constitutional amendments has been extended. Diane Abbott's speech will be at 5 p.m. this afternoon, and I remind all delegates that all votes taking place are at the end of the session. I would also like to remind conference that they should raise their hands if they wish to make a point, and to refrain from the waiving of any items. Conference, I move CAC Report 3.
Thanks, Harry. Does anybody have any questions or any points they want to raise? Yeah, at the back.
Claire Wadey, Brighton Pavilion, CLP. Conference. We'd like to ask Conference Arrangements Committee when Conference Arrangements Committee will be timetabling the party's annual report for delegates' questions. If you've got a hard copy, it's the report that you were sent that looks like this. It's quite a big report. If you haven't got a hard copy, you might have had trouble uploading it to read. So far, the only questions that have been called for delegates to take have been the questions to the finance report, which were taken 2 days ago. Our CLP has questions to other parts of the report, which are important to our members. At last year's conference, CAC referred our CLP's emergency resolution to the NEC. We've heard nothing since, but there are pages in this report that are relevant to that, and we'd like to ask questions about it. Thank you.
Yep, Delegate.
So I'm Jill, Lewisham Western Penn's CLP, and I'd like to start by thanking the hundreds of delegates that spent 5 hours on Sunday evening debating and compositing the Brexit motion. I think it was brilliant that after a huge amount of debate, we were able to reach a consensus on the wording, which is why I'm disappointed that the time allowed for debate on the motion this morning is an hour and a half compared to the nearly 3 hours for this afternoon's session. And I would formally ask that the CAC consider extending the amount of time available for the Brexit debate of the Brexit composite motion on the basis that 150 CLPs submitted contemporary motions and were accepted, more than 200 submitted motions. I believe that as delegates of our CLPs expect us to spend more time debating Brexit. It is happening on March the 29th next year. We have 6 months. We have finally been able to reach a consensus view among delegates here. And I believe we need to both celebrate that and allow sufficient time for all views across the range of views in our party to be heard respectfully and contribute to a considered and positive outcome going forwards.
Is there anybody else? Yep, come forward. If there's anybody else, could you keep your hands raised?
Hello, Sarah Greenslade, Mid Sussex CLP. Could we, Conference Arrangement Committee, please print more of these? They're very popular today. I don't have access to one. I was at a policy seminar this morning. Thank you.
I'll now ask Harry Donaldson to respond.
Thanks, Chair. The request from Sarah will get more of these moved on to the party stand because obviously we know that people require these. Regarding Brexit, there will be more speakers after lunch, and that's why we have moved the votes to the end of session today to allow for more time due to the amount of people that were involved in the compensating. So hopefully that will cover the opportunities there for more speakers. In terms of Claire's issue from Brighton and Pavilion, we will take back the request to the committee today. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. We'll now take the vote on the CAC report. Can I see all those in favour of accepting the report? Please show. All those against? That's accepted. Thank you. Conference, we must now consider the rule amendments which have been put forward by constituency Labour parties. There were originally 15 of these, but some have since been withdrawn. They are listed in the Conference Arrangements Committee Report 3. I will now ask Jim Kennedy to speak on these rule changes on behalf of the National Executive Committee.
Okay, Conference, it's Jim Kennedy introducing the NEC recommendations for Conference this morning. And if Conference can bear with me, because as recently as just coming out, there's been some late changes to the agenda on the constitutional amendments. So we'll go through in terms of card vote number. So on card vote 10 and card vote 11, the NEC recommendation is to vote against, as these rules would force the party to allow members of rival parties into the Labour Party. On card vote 12, the NEC recommendation is to vote against, as this rule change would create a complicated set of requirements for gender balance on CLP delegations to annual conference, potentially meaning that delegations would not be gender balanced at annual conference in some years. On card vote 13, the NEC recommendation is to vote for. This rule change would establish standing orders for annual conference, making our procedures clearer for delegates. On card vote 14, the NEC recommendation is to vote for. This rule change would abolish the one-year delay which is currently imposed on constitutional amendments submitted to annual conference by CLPs and affiliated organisations. This represents a simplification of our processes in line with the open spirit of the democracy review. On card vote 15, the NEC recommendation is to vote for. This rule change will create a second deputy leader position reserved for a woman. I understand, however, the CLP may wish to update on their position on this issue. On card vote 16, the NEC recommendation is to vote against. This rule change will create a complex set of arrangements for how our deputy leader is elected and would also create inconsistencies in our rule book as it refers to specific dates which are now outdated. The constitutional amendment in the name of Kingswood CLP that's on your pad as card vote 17, my understanding is the CLP has now withdrawn. On card vote 18, the NEC recommendation is to vote against. This rule change would put in place an entirely new set of arrangements for the election of our General Secretary and would cut across the excellent new General Secretary, Jenny Formby, whose election conference confirmed on Sunday. You will see in your CAC report that constitutional amendments under card votes 19 and 20 have been withdrawn. In relation to the constitutional amendment in the name of Cheltenham CLP against card vote 21, my understanding is the CLP has now withdrawn that constitutional amendment. On card vote 22, the NEC recommendation is to vote against. This rule change would allow CLPs to refuse to field a candidate in a general election without having any regard to the party's national electoral strategy and could therefore undermine our ability to win a general election. And finally, on card vote 23, the NEC recommendation is for the CLP to remit the rule change. The NEC statement on the democracy review made clear we are launching a review into our local government structures and procedures, and this rule change would therefore preempt the NEC's review. If the CLP is not willing to remit, then the NEC recommendation will be to vote against the rule change. Thank you, Conference.
Thanks, Jim. Conference, the procedure will be that each rule change will be moved by a delegate of the CLP concerned who has 5 minutes to speak. If no delegate of the CLP moves the rule change, then it falls. So the first rule change is on membership of other parties and is to be moved by BROXTOWE CLP.
Good morning, Conference. My name is Ella Kearney. I'm from BROXTOWE Labour. I'm a first-time delegate, so it'd be nice. I'm very scared. And I've also recently been selected as Borough Council candidate in the May elections for Stapleford South West. I'm here today to move this rule change. We love the current rule. It's brilliant. It keeps Tories out. It keeps other right-wing parties out, such as the EDL, that seek to essentially undermine our principles and aims. But principles and aims is a key term that is missing from the current rule. And the reason that that's important is because currently it has the potential to exclude hard-working socialists from our party, despite the fact that the membership of another political organisation may well be in line with the aims and principles of the Labour Party. The principal condition of party membership should be that of supporting Labour and its candidates to be elected locally and nationally. The current wording, excuse me, I'm not the most organised person in the world. The current wording is as follows. A member of the party who joins and/or supports a political organisation other than an official Labour group or unit of the party, or supports any candidate who stands against an official Labour candidate or publicly declares their intent to stand against the Labour candidate, shall automatically be ineligible to be or remain a party member, subject to the provisions of Part 6.1.2 of the disciplinary rules. We at Broxtowe Labour move to change this wording and amend the rule to read: a member of the party who joins and/or supports a political organisation that is in conflict with the aims and principles of the Labour Party, or supports any candidate who stands against an official Labour candidate or publicly declares their intent to stand against a Labour candidate, shall be automatically ineligible to be in or remain a party member. For that reason, I ask you today, Conference, to please support this motion. It's incredibly important. It will allow many members that were expelled in 2016 to rejoin the party, provided that they do agree to abide by the aims and principles of the Labour Party, and it will prevent people from being excluded in the future. Thank you.
The next rule change is also on membership of other parties and is to be moved by one of those listed CLPs. We've got a delegate from one of those listed CLPs for this rule change. Falmouth. Yep, come forward. Can we have a delegate come up and confirm that, please? Can you just confirm your name
okay.
And your CLP?
My name is Kate Thomas, and I'm from Truro and Falmouth CLP. We submitted the motion for card vote 11, and we have since remitted it and will not be supporting card vote 10.
Thank you. Conference, the next rule change is on the makeup of CLP delegations and is to be moved by Copeland CLP. Could South Derbyshire or Islington North be ready for the next proposed rule change to be moved?
Hello, Linda Johns-Bullman, Copeland. First time conference, first time delegate. Had a heart stint implanted on Wednesday. Thank you, NHS, I'm alive. Yeah, we just asked to remit item number 12. We oppose. Thank you.
Sorry, can you confirm that again?
We oppose, yeah, we remit article on the 12. Thank you.
Thank you. Next rule change is on annual conference standing orders and is to be moved by one of the listed CLP, South Derbyshire or Islington North. Could Filton and Bradley North come forward ready to move their rule change?
Thanks, Chair. Conference comrades, Ben Hayes is the North CLP Youth Delegate. This amendment seeks to help our conference operate in a clear and consistent way as possible. Standing orders from the NEC will mean that not only can we go into conference with some real knowledge about the week's debates, but we have a solid basis for the mechanics of procedures such as car votes, emergency motions, remittance, etc. This is a common practice in CLPs across the country, as I'm sure you're aware. Also the trade union movement, I know in my own experience in my trade union Unite, it's always helped the conference to operate in a fair and effective way. I think this is particularly important given the growth we've had in membership over the last few years. We've all seen this week the fantastic new delegates who are clearly eager to get stuck into our party's processes and have their say. So I think it's important we have sort of as much clarity and we assist that as much as we possibly can. This is my first time as a delegate, and even as someone who has followed the ins and outs of the Labour Party, we're spending much more time doing that than I care to mention. There have been sort of parts of the week, especially earlier on in the conference, that are sort of quite difficult to follow and could seem a bit kind of alienating. I'm aware that thank you. I'm aware that over the course of the conference, hearing all the sort of bold, radical, exciting policies from our front bench team, and all the excellent stories from delegates, that this sort of stuff can seem a bit sort of dry and underwhelming. But given conference is quite rightly the sovereign decision-making process for this party, I mean, it's crucial that we do our utmost to make sure it reflects the kind of democratic, open, effective values that we want to put forward as a party as a whole. And I think, given our Chancellor kicked off the debate on the economy yesterday, we're very fitting quite for Bill Shankly. I think it's only right that I mention my own sort of personal political hero, Arsene Wenger, who said that, who quite rightly said that the most inspirational words you can give anyone in coaching are "I trust you." I think it's important that we trust our delegates to make our policy and shape the agenda for this party by giving them the tools required, and to make sure that this conference is the most effective springboard possible for going out and campaigning to get the man who we in Islington North CLP are very proud and privileged to have had as our MP for 35 years, Jeremy Corbyn, as our next Prime Minister. So I think this is just sort of one small step to making sure that conference is as effective as possible in setting the agenda for our party, and that all delegates can kind of have their say and understand what's happening. We have transparency, consistency and clarity. Let's do our bit to make sure that this is the case as much as possible next year. Thank you.
Conference. The next rule changes on constitutional amendments and is to be moved by Fulton and Bradley Stoke CLP and then seconded by Blackley and Broughton CLP.
Good morning, Conference. I'm Katie Cooper, representing Filton and Bradley Stoke CLP. I'm a proud member of GMB and the Unite community. I'm here to speak in favour of Vote Card 14 and to move the rule change, to remove the obsolete one-year delay for CLPs and unions re-rule changes. I'm so happy to finally be here to bring this rule change to conference. It has taken us 3 years. My CLP initially suggested this rule change in 2015, and with the year delay, it finally came to conference in 2017. But it still wasn't heard, Instead, to support the democracy review, we remitted it. This year, the amazing news is that it has been approved by the NEC, albeit too late to be considered in Sunday's democracy review, but it's here now, being heard today with NEC endorsement, which is really exciting. Conference. I urge you to vote to remove the one-year delay for 3 reasons. Firstly, we are all defenders of democracy. It is our jobs as citizens to defend democracy, and it is our jobs as members of the Labour Party to ensure that our party is a beacon of our principles. It's our job to make the structures of the Labour Party equitable and fair. By removing the year delay, members and the NEC gain some parity. At the moment, the CLP have to wait a minimum of 1 year, whereas the NEC can suggest a rule change just hours before conference, as it did this year with vote card 8. Secondly, by empowering members, we empower our party. We all agree that the fight is with the Tories, not with each other. So let's make the 3 pillars of the Labour Party, the executive, the unions and the membership, as strong as possible. The phrases, our strength is in our numbers, for the many and in solidarity, only mean anything when we are equal. When members of an institution feel relevant and valued, when an institution mirrors the principles and values of its members, members are happier, more motivated and more passionate. Thirdly, we members deserve to have more equality within the party. We deserve to have a stronger voice in shaping the party. We are the backbone of the party. We work hard and give Labour hours and hours of our time. We are a party that is a community party, working at the most local level, making Labour politics relevant to all and that truly represent millions. Labour is a mass movement, a member-led party. We deserve to know that we are trusted, respected and appreciated. This rule change will give members and trade unions the ability to bring rule changes to conference the same year they are put forward. Vote today in support of card vote 14. Thank you, conference.
Thanks, Kate. Hello, conference. My name's Tom Long from Blakely and Broughton, CLP. It's my first time at conference and first time speaking. So, I'm seconding this amendment to abolish the one-year delay on constitutional amendments. Basically, we've had a surge of new members since Jeremy's become leader, and we want to encourage those members to get involved in all aspects of the party, at branch, constituency, city parties, and all the way up to conference. It's really in the spirit of the democracy review, this, and we want to get rid of this delay so that we can submit amendments and have them debated and discussed at the following conference. So if we're serious about democratising the party from the bottom up, abolishing this one-year delay, it really is a no-brainer. It stifles democracy, puts people off getting involved, and it's actually pretty unnecessary because the NEC do have the time to deal with the amendments that come forward. Okay, so I urge you to support this amendment. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next rule change is on second deputy leader and is to be moved by Wirral West CLP.
Angela Marinkovitz, Wirral West CLP. Some of you may have heard of us. We've recently had our own sort of trial by media. I'm here to talk about our motion for Deputy Leader. Conference, I'd like to thank the NEC for agreeing to support our rule change, which means that we will always have at least one woman Deputy Leader. It will mean that never again will we see what we saw at the special conference to announce the leader and deputy leader in 2015, a whole platform full of men. We have a history of strong women who've made a difference in the Labour Party. People like Barbara Castle, Betty Boothroyd, Mo Molam, Tessa Jowell, Jo Cox, just to name a few of them. Diane Abbott, absolutely. Nearly half of our MPs are women, and we have 16 women in the shadow cabinet at the moment. Not only do we have Jenny Formby now as our fantastic General Secretary, but this rule change would mean that we will also have at least one other woman on our leadership team, and that will make a difference. There have been some disturbing reports that this rule change has widespread support because those who want to divide our party and undermine Jeremy Corbyn want to use this as a way to do it. Making an election about another deputy leader, about Brexit, a new centre party, or whatever project they think up to sow disunity. I want to say to those people, the membership and the voters are sick of this sectarian game. We want a Labour government, and the people of this country need a Labour government. And we want Jeremy Corbyn as our next Prime Minister. Conference, we've had a deputy leader now for 96 years, and yet only 9 years of that have they been women. Those women, Margaret Beckett and Harriet Harman, both had to step up at some point and become interim leaders. We want change, but we want change for a united party in the traditions of all our great deputy leaders of the past, who didn't just focus on internal party matters, they fought for radical change and led campaigns for a Labour government. People like Clement Attlee, Nye Bevan, Michael Foot, and not forgetting, of course, John Prescott and his battle bus. Conference, we have a choice. We can use this election for a new deputy leader as a vehicle for division, or we can use it as a vehicle for unity, which will strengthen our team as we go into the next general election. But this election could happen any day now. So on that basis, we would like to remit our motion to allow the NEC to look at both positions being elected together and maximise support for Jeremy Corbyn. He deserves nothing less. Only say I remit.
Thanks, Delegate. The next rule change is on election method for deputy leader and is to be moved by Hornsey and Wood Green CLP.
Hello, Conference. Max Clayton CLOWES, Hornsey and Wood Green CLP from Haringey in London. First conference, first time speaking. This motion was first submitted by Hornsey and Wood Green CLP in 2016, and it actually should have been debated last year, but for an NEC error, hence the inaccuracies they have referred to as grounds to dismiss the motion. Delegates may be wondering why this motion has been brought forward, given we've just had a democracy review. Democracy review proposals have not addressed the question of gender balance of our leadership team. This motion remains relevant and vitally important. I was not very involved in my local party when this motion was approved by our CLP, but I am proud to propose it here today simply because I'm surprised I have to. Since joining this party, one of the things I've been most reassured by is the strength of our women's voices. Thanks to our progressive rulebook, every time I vote at executive committee, at general committee, and at the ward level, I can do so safe in the knowledge that we will end up with a diverse and representative array of officers and delegates. We know the principle of this motion works at the CLP level, and we only have to look to the other side of the House of Commons to see how not to do things. Whilst our diverse membership blossoms, just 29% of Conservative Party members are women. Only 21% of Conservative Party MPs are women, and yet they can sit opposite our party and question our commitment to inclusivity, simply because they've had 2 female prime ministers. Our leadership record needs to be updated to be consistent with our ethos and goals. We set the standard for inclusivity in politics. I understand that in 2016, our fantastic leader Jeremy signed Labour Women's Network's inspiring pledge, Lead for Women, which showing his support for this policy in principle. Our leadership team supports this policy in principle. And it's fantastic to see other CLPs recognising the need for a representative leadership team, as Wirral West have just done. It worries me that it was even proposed that 33% would be enough, given at a CLP level, 50-50 is what we expect and demand. As we heard on Sunday, every step we take forwards on women's rights and inclusivity echoes around the world. We've heard enough revelations about women's experiences in politics this year to see that party rulebooks need to enshrine women's voices at all levels. I think it's only right that in the 100th year of women's suffrage, we formally hold the Labour Party leadership to the standards of representation that we expect at a CLP level and in every aspect of our lives. Thank you.
Conference, the next rule change on abolition of registered supporter status from Kingswood CLP has been withdrawn. The next rule change on election method for the General Secretary has been withdrawn. The next rule change on election method for leader and deputy leader of the Welsh Labour has been withdrawn. The next rule change on local government representation on the NEC from Dartford has also been withdrawn. Yep. Come forward. Right, we'll start that again because my sheet doesn't have numbers on. The next rule change, the abolition of registered supporters status from Kingswood, which was card vote 17, has been withdrawn. The next one on election method for General Secretary was number 18, has been withdrawn. The next rule change on election method for leader and deputy leader of the Welsh Government, which was number 20, has been withdrawn. 19. The next rule change on local government representation on the NEC by Dartford is 20. The next rule change on Westminster parliamentary selections, moved by Cheltenham, number 21, has been withdrawn. The next rule change on Westminster selection, CLP rights not to field a candidate, to be moved by Richmond Park, CLP, is to be moved. If we could come forward, Richmond.
Mike Freedman, Richmond Park, CLP. Conference. As a member of this party for 54 years, I continue to want a democratic, transparent and devolved party, strong and vibrant enough to secure our election on a socialist platform. Nothing has changed in those 54 years. Is there anyone here in this hall who does not want these two things? I'd be amazed if there was. Our motion facilitates them. It empowers CLPs not to select a parliamentary candidate if it so wishes, aligning itself with the authority already given and vested to CLPs with respect to local authority elections. It requires no obligation on the part of a CLP. It simply widens its choices for parliamentary elections subject to the NEC agreement, which we cannot imagine they would withhold. It is also consistent with Jeremy Corbyn's oft-repeated message that CLPs should have more authority over decision-making and more responsibility over its own affairs. There are many reasons, therefore, to pass this motion. First of all, it does increase that authority, that responsibility, and therefore democracy in the party by devolving authority over an important issue to the place where the organisation's heart beats, at CLP level. Secondly, it can save an awful lot of time and money and effort at a local and national level in seats which are truly hopeless, where we have no chance of winning. Thirdly, it facilitates the diversion of efforts to marginal seats, leading to additional Labour seats. To that extent, we certainly disagree with the NEC's assertion that this motion will in fact be against the Labour national strategy. In Richmond, we have first-hand experience which demonstrates the veracity of the motion. In the 2015 by-election, many Labour members did not actively campaign. Zac Goldsmith, that racist Tory, lost. In the general election, Labour campaigned hard. Zac Goldsmith, that racist Tory, won, albeit by 45 votes, but he won. Had Richmond, which has no councillors and hasn't had any since 1998, and is a recurring third place in parliamentary elections, diverted its effort a few minutes down the road to neighbouring Putney, we would have defeated Justin Greening, and Goldsmith would have lost. You might not like what I'm going to say next, but I would rather have one Labour Member of Parliament and one Lib Dem than two Tories. We believe that there are 22 seats in similar situations where this could happen again. We're going to need those 22 seats to defeat May, and if the boundary changes happen before the next election, we're going to need a lot more than those 22 seats. And this motion therefore suggests that local CLPs, who after all know best, can accept the right not to field a candidate because they can help their brothers and sisters and comrades in contiguous constituencies. And if we follow that route, Jeremy would have had to hire a removal van to take his stuff from Islington to Westminster. Yes, we would deprive some Labour supporters of their ability to vote in an election. And we recognise that. We think we can communicate the reasons why we are doing that, because frankly, the prize is bigger, a general election victory. I move.
Thank you. Conference, the next rule change, number 23, on the creation of local government committees, to be moved by the City of Durham CLP. We understand that's been withdrawn. Could Durham just confirm that?
Sheila Williams, City of Durham CLP. First time delegate, first time speaker. We're very pleased that Katie Clark's Democracy Review has recognised the importance of reviewing local campaign forums which are often dysfunctional, and she's considering replacing them with local government committees. We are therefore really pleased that the NEC will be launching a review, and we look forward to hearing from the review in the near future. We therefore remit.
Thank you. Conference will now take speakers on the proposed rule changes, so if you could please indicate. On the left, yeah. I'll be taking them in section. I will try and balance it out. Honestly, we are doing our best. Yep, the woman holding the green shield. Yep. And then on the back, at the left, there's a black sleeve. That's it. Just wave to me, that one.
Hello, I'm Liz Hind. I'm from Aylesbury CLP. I'm a first-time delegate and I'm a first-time speaker. I am here to speak strongly against card vote 22. To believe that the Labour Party cannot win a seat is defeatist. I was privileged to be selected to stand for local elections in an Aylesbury by-election last year. When I was selected, I was told, oh, well, never mind, you know, we'll have a campaign, we'll get the Labour Party name out there. I pushed the Tories into third. They were expected to walk. We've been told, oh, well, never mind, we've got local elections next year. The Tories in Buckinghamshire are always expected to walk those elections. Well, I'm saying Aylesbury will fight them, Buckinghamshire will fight them, because we have no other option but to fight them. I'm the Vice Chair of the County Forum. In the County Forum, we are fighting against the closures to children's centres in Buckinghamshire. We are making some headway with that. We are getting local support about the closures of children's centres. And if we do not stand and if we do not keep putting forward our candidates hopefully like me, then we just cannot fight the worst that's happening with Tory austerity. So we have to fight. So vote against card 22.
Thank you.
Brenda Weston, Taunton CLP, speaking on card vote 15. Shortest speech of the conference, I think. Thank you to the constituencies who put this forward. It would be really helpful if it was possible to post this information on the website or to email it to constituencies so that delegates can look at all of this complicated stuff before they come to conference. Thank you.
Can we indicate again, please? The steward with the holding the green paper up in the middle. The delegate right at the back holding the green paper up. Yep. A delegate on the right holding the green sheet up.
Conference. Mike Barnes, representing Halifax CLP. All views are my own. With Chair's permission, just one quick digression. I would just like to congratulate our hard-working and excellent MP, Holly Lynch, her partner, Chris, on the birth of their first child, James. And I want to assure Holly that in 18 years' time, when James rocks up to put that X against his mother's name, it will be as part of the longest-serving Labour administration in history. Conference, I will now be brief. I'm against 15, for 16, which, whilst I don't think goes far enough, is the better choice. Why, in this party, in local branches, must we have a minimum 50% female women representation as officers, but not as leader and deputy leader? So I am for 16 and against 15. Conference, thank you.
Claire Wadey, Brighton Pavilion CLP, and I'd just like to say I think all 4 of our delegates from Brighton Pavilion CLP would like to be up here. I was lucky enough to be the one to be chosen. I hope if there's time, all of our delegates, the Chair will look kindly on us, because we are in a very special position in Brighton Pavilion, having, unfortunately, very unfortunately, a Green MP. And we would like to disagree very strongly with the Council of Despair from Richmond Park. And I would like to speak very strongly against, and I urge everyone to vote against card vote 22. I had the misfortune, it was a misfortune, to be the 2017 election agent for Brighton Pavilion. I'm the constituency secretary, and it was a snap election, and in a snap election, almost every constituency secretary became the election agent. For those of you who don't know, being an election agent, your address becomes public knowledge. I didn't know that before becoming an election agent. I'm still receiving hate mail, having been the election agent. I'm still receiving mail from people who said Labour shouldn't stand because Caroline Lucas is such a great MP. This is mail from Edinburgh, from Aberdeen, from Aberystwyth, from all over the country, not from Brighton, I have to say, because in Brighton, most people know that MP does nothing for our constituency. This is mail that was encouraged by the so-called Progressive Alliance, the Progressive Alliance which is endorsed by members of our party, and I'd like those members of our party to go back and reconsider their opinions. We have, please conference, we have rules in our rule book where if you sign the nomination paper for another party, you're expelled, you're automatically excluded. We have members of our party who supported the Progressive Alliance who called in our constituency that Labour shouldn't stand a candidate. Somehow they find themselves in the shadow cabinet, and I would like to question that decision regardless of their abilities, regardless of their politics. Yeah? We will always stand a Labour candidate in Brighton Pavilion, and that doesn't mean to say we don't help the neighbouring constituencies. Almost all of our members went and helped elect a Labour candidate as Labour MP in Brighton Kemp Town, and I very much welcome Lloyd Russell Moore, who's the brilliant Labour MP in Kemp Town and a brilliant new election. And we also helped re-elect Peter Carlin Hove. And we were pleased to do that. Our members went to both constituencies, and we still ran an election campaign in Pavilion, and we still held the Labour vote in Pavilion and increased that vote. It is possible to do that because we have a great membership, and we have great members committed to our party who will always vote Labour, and we should always vote have a Labour candidate. Please vote against card vote 22. Thank you.
Conference, we are trying to get as many speakers up as we can, and if you have spoken before and there's somebody else in your delegation who could actually come up and speak, because all we can see up here is usually an arm waving about. So if you could pass it on to, well, not put your arm up on that debate. Thank you.
Eddie Dougal, Bury St Edmunds CLP. My CLP has never had anything other than a Tory MP, ever. And although we did come within 368 votes of making history in 97. The snap election found us without a selected candidate, and we fear we may again be found unprepared, with our trousers down, around our ankles, and making a quick start at least almost impossible and certainly not very nice to see. But with this in mind, we see that history could be repeated here. With this in mind, we wanted to start the selection of our candidate straight away. Now, it took 2 letters to the National General Secretary before we got the reply, which was disappointing, that we had to wait until the possible boundary changes happen. Well, they may happen, they may not, but that apparent obstacle hasn't stopped other CLPs getting their candidate in position, raising the profile, being the on-the-spot person to go to when anyone wanted, the media of any description wanted a quote or an opinion. Now, we are in a disadvantage here. We're not a target seat, but the response from the NEC makes it more and more impossible for us to become one. We fought a very good campaign last time, but we didn't have the candidate, well, we had the candidate imposed upon us. This time we have several local candidates who would be prepared to stand and are keen to stand, and we don't have the possibility of beginning the selection campaign. And obviously we would like a local candidate, but in the selection we'd obviously ask for members from anywhere else to put their applications in, but we would like a local candidate. We are being prevented from starting. And if we again have a snap election, which is on the cards, hopefully it does happen, but we again will be at the back of the queue, and we just won't be able to do as well as we could do if we have a local candidate already selected, which is why I was extremely disappointed when card vote 21, Cheltenham, was withdrawn. I don't know why it was withdrawn, but I think it's a good thing that if we don't have in a constituency a Labour candidate, we should start the selection straight away. And the resolution says the resolution, which has been withdrawn, says that within 6 months that must happen. Well, that's fine. Thank you.
3 more speakers, please. On the right, holding the white, yep. At the back, holding the red, yep. And one on the left in the blue shirt.
Hello Conference, my name's Heather, I'm from Hackney South CLP. Thank you. I'd like to say something about card vote 22, and it doesn't stop, my reading of it, it doesn't stop a CLP like Brighton Pavilion standing a candidate. What it does is to leave a decision to CLPs, to local members. I think this is very, very in tune with the kind of things that we've been arguing earlier in conference. We've been trying to say devolve power to CLPs to decide who their candidate is. But we're also, why should we insist over the wishes of a local COP what they do in an election? So I think actually in terms of democracy, this is a good change. I'd also like to note that this is the second year that that members have agreed to remit a rule change to change local campaign forums into local government forums. I think it's really sad to see this remitted 2 years running. I really hope that the NEC, the National Executive, will take note of members' patience on this issue and take seriously the desire for change and democratisation of the processes we have within local government. Thank you.
Morning, Conference. I'm Councillor Jeremy Ambash from Wandsworth. We nearly took from the Tories in May, just 6 votes behind them in terms of seats. I'm wanting to support Rule Change 22 in support of our friends from Richmond Park CLP and put the petition where it should stand, with the few constituencies that would choose to, with CLP members and with the NEC. Let's trust local members to make wise decisions. So I'm from next door Putney constituency, where Justin Greening MP represents us with a wafer-thin majority of 1,500 votes. If this rule change had been in place, we might well have helped unseat 2 MPs, Justin Greening in Putney and the dreaded Zach Goldsmith in Richmond Park. Thank you.
Conference, Shane Mockery-Cox, Grave from CLP, first-time delegate and first-time speaker. Conference, just very briefly in support of card vote 13. Not only do we want some really decent standing orders for our conference, but also we want the maximum amount of time we can debate some of the stuff that comes to this conference in our CLPs. I think all of us found that some of the paperwork, some of the policy form documents and that lot came not only in electronic form, but a little bit too late, before the summer, and it didn't allow the maximum amount of participation in our CLPs. We want that debate to energise our members so they can go out there and fight for a Labour government, but we can only do that if we've got the time to do it. So as part of that, can there be a bit of timetable in there to make sure papers are given out in good time and in advance? Thank you very much.
Conference, this will be the last speaker on this one. We've got to move on.
Good morning, Conference. Graham Hogg, Dwyfor Meirionydd Constituency Labour Party. Opposing number 22. Dwyfor Meirionydd is not just a constituency with a big name, it's one of the biggest constituencies in the country. But sadly, not as many Labour voters as we'd like. And if we were to follow the views of Richmond Park, we wouldn't be standing a candidate. But I'm proud to say that we do stand a candidate, and we build the Labour vote every election. I'm proud that the Labour Party is a national party, and at election time you can live in any constituency in the United Kingdom, or at least in Britain, in Wales, England and Scotland, and vote for a Labour candidate, vote for Jeremy Corbyn. Imagine in your constituency if there wasn't a Labour candidate to vote for, and this could have been the case in Dwyfor Meirionydd at the last election, that imagine people not having a Labour candidate to vote for, but being able to vote for UKIP. That is why we want to have a Labour candidate in every constituency. Reject number 22.
Thanks, Conference. I'll now call Jim Kennedy, who will reply to the debate.
Okay, Conference, thanks for everyone for their contributions. I'll try and summarise. BROXTOWE, which is card vote 10, the current rule fulfils the requirements set out by the delegate from BROXTOWE. There are no other parties which fully support our aims and values other than the Cooperative Party, and therefore the NEC recommendation remains against. It's welcome that the CLPs on card votes 11 and 12 have remitted in line with the NEC's recommendation, and I thank them for that. The delegate from Islington North was doing extremely well until he mentioned Arsene Wenger, but regardless of that, the recommendation is still 4 on card vote 13 for standing orders for conference. Thank you to the delegates from FILTON and Bradley Stoke. The NEC recommends voting for card vote 14, abolishing the one-year delay on rule changes. Thank you to the delegate from Wirral West on card vote 15. We acknowledge you have remitted and the NEC will take account of the important points you have made. On 16, the delegate from Hornsey made important points on gender equality, and in line with Wirrell's withdrawal, the NEC will consider these points. However, the recommendation remains is to vote against. Thank you to the delegations in relation to card vote 17 to 21 for withdrawing. The delegate from Richmond Park made points about targeting seats in election. Our election strategy already encourages members to assist in nearby target constituencies, and many comrades did this with great success in last year's general election. CLPs refusing to run a candidate against the Lib Dems would deprive our communities of the opportunity to vote for Labour and undermine our electoral strategy. The points made by the delegates from Aylesbury, Brighton and other CLPs set this out clearly, and the NEC recommendation remains to vote against card vote 22. Thank you to the City of Durham's delegate. I can assure you that the NEC will take account of your proposed rule change in our local government review. In response to the delegate from Halifax, I note your points, and of course we all congratulate Holly and her partner. Delegates should be aware that the rule changes that have been withdrawn or remitted will not be voted on when votes are taken at the end of conference on this afternoon session, and hopefully there will be a slide that will assist delegates to a vote at the close of conference. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Just to confirm that the votes will be taken at the end of the afternoon session. Conference, we're now moving on to the next session, that is Brexit and the economy. This is a debate on how the Tories have spent more time arguing amongst themselves and negotiating with Europe, putting jobs and the economy at risk. Labour will invest to create good, secure jobs in every community and negotiate a Brexit deal that puts jobs and living standards first, with a new comprehensive UK-EU customs union and a new single market deal. Our first speaker is Keir Starmer, Shadow Secretary of State for exiting the European Union.
Thanks very much, Conference. It's fantastic to be back here in Liverpool, a city of great passion and energy. Although there was an odd moment on Sunday afternoon as my team Arsenal were beating Everton, and I got smiles from one side and scowls from the other. But passion and energy in lumps here. And talking of passion and energy, can I just begin by thanking my fantastic shadow Brexit team. Jenny Chapman, Paul Blomfield and Matt Pennicook, who've been the shadow ministers doing fantastic work. Emma Hardy, Jess Morden and Diane Hayter leading for us in the Lords, along with Angela Smith, our leader in the Lords. Thank you all for the work that you've done for us in these difficult times. Conference, can I also thank a very special group of colleagues with us, and that's our Labour MEPs. These last 2 years have been especially difficult for you, but you've led our party in Europe and acted for our country in Europe, and we owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you to all of our MPs, present and past. Conference, the last 2 years has not been easy. Like many of you, I was devastated by the result of the referendum. Like many of you, I had campaigned and voted to remain. Not for the technical benefits of membership, important though they are, but because I'm proud to say I'm an internationalist. I believe that nations achieve more together than they do alone. I believe that the challenges facing our nation, whether that's conflict, terrorism, climate change, those challenges are best met together with our EU partners. And conference, if we think of the opportunities facing our nation, scientific research, medical developments, education, art and culture, those opportunities are going to be realised best with our EU partners. And conference, those values of collaboration and cooperation, they didn't die on the 23rd of June 2016, and they must guide everything that we do as we go through the Brexit process, because we cannot give in to the narrow ideology that is driving the Tory approach to Brexit. And conference, that's why we did not duck the challenge of Brexit. It would have been easy to wish away the result, but we didn't. We stepped up, we stood together, and we fought the government tooth and nail. And conference, we were right to do that. We were right to say jobs and the economy must come first. We were right to say that EU citizens are not bargaining chips. We were right to say there's going to need to be a transition period so we don't go off a cliff. And we were right to say we need a customs union with the EU to protect our manufacturing base and to keep the solemn commitment to no hard border in Northern Ireland. And we were right to argue for a single market deal to go with that customs union. And we were absolutely right to insist that Parliament has a meaningful vote on the Article 50 deal that the Prime Minister seeks to bring back. And I'm glad we stepped up to those challenges. The conference, we're about to be tested again. Over the next few weeks and months, hugely important decisions are going to be made that are going to affect each and every one of us. And what does the Prime Minister say? Even in the aftermath of Salzburg, she says, trust me on Brexit. Trust her on Brexit. Trust the Prime Minister whose first choice as Foreign Secretary was Boris Johnson. Her second choice was the man who's been running down the NHS for the past few years. And conference, this Prime Minister is responsible for the hostile environment. This Prime Minister appointed a Secretary of State for Northern Ireland who doesn't understand the basics about Northern Ireland, let alone the complexities. So, conference, this Prime Minister does not deserve our trust. Just when we need strong government, strong leadership, what have we got? Division, chaos, failure. The government has no credible plan for Brexit weeks out from the deadline. No credible solution for Northern Ireland weeks out from the deadline. And it's blindingly obvious that there's no majority for Chequers. The Prime Minister must have been the only person surprised last week that Chequers was not going to be accepted either in Europe or by our own party. But conference, what has happened is that the Tory civil war on Europe that's been going on for years now risks our prosperity. The party, do you remember, that promised to fix the roof whilst the sun was shining, is now intent on burning the House down. So, Conference, I've got a message for the Prime Minister. If your party wants to tear itself apart, that's fine. But you're not taking our country with you. And Conference, that is why Labour set 6 tests for Brexit. Not just technical tests, but tests that set out the sort of country, the sort of society that we want, where the well-being of all our communities matter. Those tests weren't plucked from thin air. They were taken from promises and commitments that the government made about what it would achieve in these negotiations. The Prime Minister's response to the test was that she was determined to meet them. Well, things may be going hopelessly wrong for her. She may have lowered her expectations, but I'm not lowering mine. And Conference, I know you want to know, our members want to know where we stand on our tests going into this important vote in the autumn. Some say we may vote for the deal that the Prime Minister brings back, maybe abstain, maybe vote for a vague deal. So let me be absolutely clear. If the Prime Minister returns with a deal that does not meet our tests, and that looks increasingly likely, we will vote against her deal. And Conference, if the Prime Minister thinks that she can come back with a vague deal, asking us to leap blindfold into the unknown, we will vote that down. Conference, we didn't set tests that could be met by refusing to answer the question. A vague or blind Brexit is a leap to nowhere, and we'll have no part of it. Now, Conference, let's be clear. This is not about frustrating the process. It is about stopping a destructive Tory Brexit. It is about fighting for our values, and it is about fighting for our country. And Conference, when it comes to that vote in Parliament, we do not accept that the choice is between whatever the Prime Minister manages to cobble together or no deal. That is not a meaningful vote. Between really bad and even worse, no deal would be a catastrophe. And no government has the right to plunge our country into chaos because of their own failures. So if Parliament votes down the Prime Minister's deal, or she can't reach a deal, that is not the end of the debate. And Labour must step up again and shape what happens next. Our preference is clear. We want a general election to sweep away this failed government. And Conference, having swept them away, we want to install a radical Labour government capable of transforming this country. And that's what should happen after 2 years of negotiations ending in failure. But if that's not possible, we must have other options. And Conference, that must include campaigning for a public vote. Conference, it's right that Parliament has the first say. It's right that Parliament has the first say. But if we need to break the impasse, our options must include campaigning for a public vote, and nobody is ruling out Remain as an option. And Conference. And Conference. Thank you, Conference. And can I... That's why I'm very pleased that we as a party can put our full weight behind this morning's motion, which will be moved by the GMB. And can I just thank all of the delegates, the hundreds of delegates, who sweated it out with us on Sunday night for nearly 6 hours to get a motion that we could put forward. Conference, you know, and our members know that there are differences of opinion on Brexit. But what happened in that session is we reached a consensus. We're able to put a united position before Conference today. And Conference, just to fast forward a week to contrast the position when we vote on our motion, our consensus motion, in a united Labour Party way. Fast forward to the chaos you're likely to see at the Tory Party conference, where they weren't able to agree anything at all. Now, Conference, you will appreciate that all of us in the room on Sunday evening missed the last episode of The Bodyguard. There are nearly 300 people walking around not wanting to know what happened. So if you watched it, please don't tell us what happened. We haven't caught up yet. And Conference, one final but important point. Whatever the deal the Prime Minister does or doesn't bring back, that's only part of the debate. The referendum was not just about technical membership of the EU. It was much wider and much deeper than that. It became a vote on the state of the nation. It became a vote on economics and politics and how they work, or in many cases, don't work. And millions of people sent us a very clear message that we must transform our economy, rebuild our public services, tackle inequality wherever it is, and give power back to our communities. There can be no satisfactory response to the referendum unless we have the right relationship with the EU, but also the right deal for Britain. Conference, I'm under no illusion about the challenge ahead. We're going through uncertain times, and Brexit has divided the country. But we must remain united in the fight for our values, values that hold our party together, and values which I think could bring the country back together. That is our challenge, and we must rise to it. Thank you, Conference. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keir. He makes it sound easy. Conference, we have a number of items in this debate. These include the contemporary composites on Brexit and government contracts. The main Policy Commission report we are considering is that of Environment, Energy and Climate Change on pages 39 to 54 of the National Policy Forum report. We have also been notified of a proposal to refer back on a section of the National Policy Forum report. So first we'll move on to the contemporary composites, and the first one we'll take is contemporary composite number 5 on Brexit, to be moved by the GMB, and could Exeter CLP be ready to second? Thank you.
Good morning, Conference. Tim Roach, GMB, moving Composite 5, and in doing so, can I first of all pay tribute to Keir Starmer? What a class act. And doesn't it just show that if you have someone leading negotiations who has integrity and working people at their very heart, then that's what can be achieved. Keir, well done. At Conference, I genuinely wish I didn't have to speak to a motion on Brexit. My union, GMB, campaigned for Remain, but we knew the dangers. Years of governments out of touch with working people led to frustration with the political class. Whole communities said that they would rather risk tearing down the entire system than live with the status quo that they were experiencing. Our movement shouted from the rooftops about the crisis in working class communities. We told the politicians. We decried the flogging off of our public services. We warned about insecure work. We screamed about the lack of council housing. I take no pleasure but see great irony in the howls emanating from some of the Blairites and big business about the perils of Brexit, when it was their slavish devotion to free and flexible markets which led us here in the first place. We told them, Conference, but they didn't listen. So GMB respects the vote to leave the EU, but how we leave is as important as the decision to leave in the first place. It's crucial. It really matters. It matters to jobs and industry, whether we're in a customs union and can participate in the single market. It matters to each and every person who values peace and stability that we prevent a hard border in Ireland. It matters to working people, the length and breadth of this country, that when they go to work, they have rights, they have a say, that they have their safety. It's not discarded by red tape, by the Bullingdon Club Tories who've never done a day's work in their bloody lives. So yes, the country voted to leave, but people didn't vote leave for more uncertainty, more insecure jobs. It was the lack of power over their own lives that led to them wanting to take back control. People didn't vote leave to see household bills skyrocket. It was the daily struggle to provide for their families that led to the rejection of a broken system. And people didn't vote for the privatisation of even more services through dodgy backroom trade deals. They voted leave because they couldn't get an appointment with their GP. They couldn't get their kids into a local school. Conference, I have no faith whatsoever in this government's ability to get a deal for working people, to address these very issues. No faith the government will pass Labour's 6 tests. Because the reality out there is that imports in food, in manufacturing, in pharmaceuticals, in energy, in health, right across our country, workers and employers alike are telling me that there is no plan. The Prime Minister is held hostage by her own ministers. She has no plan A, let alone a plan B, no deal, no security, no clue, not even the confidence of her own people. But if Theresa May is so confident and assured of her deal, well, let's put it to the test then. Let's let the people decide. Because that, Conference, is what we do as trade unionists, day in, day out. We negotiate the best possible deal, then we put it back to our members for them to decide. And that's even more essential as the mask of the Tory Brexiteers continues to slip. Only yesterday, they cheered extreme proposals that would take an axe to working time directive proposals. Theresa May should have condemned Boris Johnson and Michael Gove for their conduct and lies. Instead, she gave them a bloody job in her cabinet. It's a scandal, conference. So this is the crux of the entire debate. In whose interests do the government negotiate? Hardline Tory toffs who are holding the Prime Minister to ransom. For the spivs and speculators. For the cosy capitalist cabal. Their mate Donald Trump at the front of the queue when they're already circling our NHS. For the bosses and bankers who care not about what led us here in the first place, they care just about the bottom line bank balance. Conference, that Brexit would be a disaster for those of us who believe in equality, in social justice and a fairer economy. We need workplace rights that allow workers to really take back control of their lives. An end to freeloading, free trading, tax dodging by multinationals like Amazon, who make billions on the back of mainstreaming insecure workers while shirking their responsibility to the taxpayers. It would mean real investment in communities that were decimated by Thatcher and never truly rebuilt. And it would mean an end to austerity that is crippling communities, killing public services, so sending people, working people, to food banks. So, conference, I'll conclude with this. If Theresa May can't get a deal that works for working people, then step aside. Let's have a general election. Let's get a party in government that will get a deal for working people. Conference, I'm proud to move. Thank you.
Good morning, Conference. Jane Begley from Exeter CLP. This is my first time at Conference and my first time as a speaker. I certainly didn't expect to come to Liverpool. Certainly didn't expect to come to Liverpool and be addressing you all on such a pivotal issue. Nervous comes nowhere near to describing how I'm feeling right now. It's a great honour and a privilege to stand before you today to second this motion, a motion we worked on till midnight on Sunday evening. Such was our commitment to finding a solution. I feel passionately about being part of the European Union, and when I joined the party in 2015, my first introduction to canvassing was pounding the streets in support of Remain. The result was a crushing disappointment. Even though in Exeter we achieved a 55% vote to Remain. I was disappointed, not just for myself, but for my then 15-year-old daughter, who was angry that she didn't get a vote, yet she and all her friends, the young people of this country, are the ones who will be most impacted by this result, badly impacted by this result. YouGov reported that over 70% of under-25s voted Remain. I came of age with the belief that it was the duty of each generation to improve the lot of the generations that follow them. Brexit is another example of how my generation, and this government in particular, have comprehensively screwed over our young people. When I went to university, not only was it free, but I was paid to go. My wonderful and intelligent, now 17-year-old daughter has serious doubts and may not pursue a degree because she is so put off by the prospect of acquiring a burden of debt. And I share her anger. In May, I was elected to Exeter City Council, taking a seat from the Tories. Thank you. I represent a ward that contains both areas of affluence and areas of deprivation. The concerns of the doorstep about Brexit did not come from the poorest areas of the ward, and this was reflected across our country, where the poorest and most disenfranchised were those who voted most decisively to leave. I do believe it was a vote against the status quo, a vote against austerity, and a vote against David Cameron, the worst possible poster boy for the Remain campaign, who promptly turned on his heels and ran away. The shambolic way in which the Tory government have conducted their so-called negotiations have shown us all how inadequate they are to the task of sorting out the unholy mess they have created. As a second-generation Irish immigrant who was raised with the perpetual backdrop of the Troubles on the national news in the 1970s, I am offended by the cavalier carelessness they have shown towards concerns about the Irish border. The risk of a no-deal Brexit is terrifyingly imminent. What we desperately need is a general election to move the Tories aside and let us hand the task to Keir Starmer and our superb leadership team, a team that has relentlessly and consistently worked with the greatest integrity, inspiring more trust and hope than I have ever felt for any politicians. Thousands like me have become activated to do all they can to become part of the change we want to see. This has been reflected in the number of people we have heard from over the last few days who are here at conference and speaking for the first time. Whilst I personally would love for us to remain in the EU, we must take care that by committing wholeheartedly to another referendum at this stage, we do not alienate all of those people across great swathes of our nation who with sincerity voted leave. The risk is that they may then dismiss us as being just the same as all the rest and not listening to their concerns. This is why I ask you, conference, to support this motion, a motion that does not bind but empowers our leadership to negotiate through the unpredictable times ahead. Thank you, conference. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Next contemporary composite 6 on government contracts has been moved by Unison, and could Bladen CLP be ready to second? Point of order. You just hold fire, we've got a point of order. Just hang fire. Yeah, could the point of order come forward?
I'm here from St Austell and Newquay, CLP. My point of order is that we haven't all got copies of the report today, and that seems bad planning, knowing how many delegates are here. And it means that we can't take the best possible position in the debate because we haven't got the information. And I, for one, haven't got the technology to read it on a smartphone or anything that I can properly read. So I would like to request that more copies are printed and that more copies are provided tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, that was raised, so CAC will be dealing with that. Dave? Thank you.
Okay, Dave Prentice Unison, moving Composite 6. My union, Unison, has always led the fight against privatisation. And Conference, how shameful that our fight was far too often against a new Labour leadership. Year after year, I've stood at this rostrum, heckled and hissed at by new Labour ministers, heckled for opposing their privatisation plans. Conference, gullible new Labour ministers, seduced by the promises of vulture capitalism, sucked in by the likes of G4S, Capita and Carillion. Gullible new Labour ministers, wined and dined, bedazzled by chief executives of multinational companies. Chief executives who promised so much and who delivered so little for our people. The Conference, much has changed in our party. Now, thanks to the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, those dark days are gone. And Conference, let us clearly say, loud and clear, never, never, never again. Never again beholden to the profiteers, never again seduced by their false promises, never again falling for that mantra, private good, public bad. Conference, a mile from here stands a shell of an empty hospital, half built, half finished, the Royal Liverpool Hospital, a £300 million building site, abandoned by Carillion. Carillion, too big to fail, now crumbling into dust. Carillion, a private company, praised by the Tories, lauded by New Labour, now leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Workers unpaid, apprentices sacked, and in this great city, left without its promised new hospital, an epic monument to failure. And Conference, just as Grenfell will forever be associated with neglect, so Carillion will always be associated with greed. Conference, I'm so proud that at long last our Labour Party is led by those who oppose privatisation of all of our public services. I've waited all my life for this. Our party, led by Jeremy Corbyn, a proud Unison member who has always stood with us on protests, campaigning against hospital closures, council cuts, privatisation. That's the kind of member of Parliament our party needs. The kind of MP who stands with you when times are tough, not just when they want something. So I want to say to everyone in this hall and every MP, get behind our leader, get behind the policies, get behind the party, and campaign for the best manifesto we have ever put to the British people. And I want this conference to make a clear and categorical promise to our people, to our delegation over here. 1.3 million Unison members provide our public services. 250,000 of them are now in the private sector. Over 1 million of our members are women doing low-paid jobs providing our public services. And I want a commitment, and we have it, from our leadership that they no longer will work just in the interest of the rich, but we will be a party that works for the cleaners, the carers, the cooks, the teaching assistants, the nurses, the people in our delegation over here, the members I am so proud to represent. We need our party preparing for power, looking outwards, moving upwards, standing united. That's what our country needs when there are kids sleeping rough on the streets of cities like this, or the 50 Birmingham care workers leafleting outside our conference only yesterday, fighting pay cuts, longer hours. And it really, really would mean so much to those lovely people that you met yesterday. It really would mean so much to them to know that you stand with them in solidarity. Let them hear you are with them. Conference, we need unity more than ever. United behind radical policies, not outdated dogmas of the past. United behind leadership that is no longer timid. For the first time in a generation, we have the opportunity to be bold, bring our people back in local government, bring our people back into the health service where they belong, and make this a year one priority, not an aspiration. Our people need help now. A day one commitment to end the scourge of privatisation. A day one commitment to bring services back in-house, inspiring our communities. Our party united, our party strong, our party in power. There's so much to be optimistic about. I move.
Conference, Siobhan Foy, Blaydon CLP Youth Delegate. Proud to be seconding this motion, proud to be part of the fight against privatisation. Conference, I know from my own experiences how much pressure public services are under and the impact of privatisation, how budgets are squeezed, how people like me, as a young carer, as a teaching assistant, are forced to pay the price. Our CLP has always been prominent in the fight for public services and for those services to be publicly owned and publicly run. And in recent years, we've had two fantastic Unison MPs in Blaydon, Dave Anderson and Liz Twist. They have always stood against the privatisation agenda in Westminster and in our community. Likewise, we've got a local council in Gateshead that has a strong track record of keeping services in-house. Locally run services that serve the community, not private profit. So we're delighted that Unison have taken the stance against privatisation outlined in this motion, continuing to make the case that they've been making for decades, one we are proud to support, that public services don't belong in the private sector, they belong in the public sector. Under Jeremy Corbyn, we have a historic opportunity to right the wrongs of the past. No longer can we, or indeed should we, accept that privatisation is inevitable. No longer can we, or again should we, accept that some services are going to be run for profit rather than for the benefit of our communities. No longer can we, or will we, accept that our NHS, care workers and support staff, people our communities rely on, are being hived out into the private sector. Unaccountable services which put profit before people. Conference, today, let's send a message loud and clear to those in Westminster and beyond that we've had enough of the privatisers, the money men giving us the bare minimum that they think they can get away with. Instead, let's demand better. Let's demand public services, all public services, are brought back in-house in the first year of our next Labour government. Let's demand the end of privatisation, full stop. And let's demand that public services are always accountable, always about decency and respect, always about need and never about profit. Thank you, Conference. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Conference. The next contemporary composite is number 7 on government contracts, to be moved by the Fire Brigade Union and seconded by Unite.
Chair, Conference, Andy Noble, Fire Brigade Union, moving composite motion 7, bizarrely in the middle of a little issue called Brexit. Comrades, there's currently 5 local authorities in England where the Police and Crime Commission has taken over governance of the Fire and Rescue Service: Essex, Cambridgeshire, Staffordshire, Northamptonshire and West Mercia. I'll leave you to find out what the common denominator is there. Most recently, on the 6th of September, legislation was laid down to give North Yorkshire PCC control of fire and rescue. These takeovers can be made by either agreement with the relevant local authority or, more worryingly, and without a mandate, in the form of an aggressive takeover, the only requirement being a submission of a business case to the Secretary of State. The FBU strongly opposes PCC takeovers of fire and rescue services and has actively fought against them. We've had our successes, for example, recently in Hertfordshire, where FBU officials and local councillors fought a successful campaign. The FBU applauds the current Labour Party position that takeovers in any form are inappropriate, but the real fear of FBU officials and representatives alike is that we're fighting against a rapidly turning tide. We oppose PCC takeovers because firefighters provide a humanitarian service. They're neither agents of the state nor enforcers of the law. The arguments in favour place too much emphasis on efficiency savings. PCCs put forward business models. The Fire and Rescue Service isn't a business. It's an essential emergency service. Yes, it needs to be efficient. Yes, it needs to be economic, but above all, it needs to be effective. Transference of governance is a threat to the independence and neutrality of the fire service. Rightly or wrongly, we're able to access areas of our communities that our colleagues in the police force sometimes find a little more difficult. Quite often those parts of our communities that are most at risk. If we lose that access because of a perceived change of identity, we lose some of our existing effectiveness, particularly in areas such as our preventative work and our educational activities. Combined police-fire governance will inevitably lead to combined budgets, and existing financial allocations could be plundered to fund other PCC projects. The fire service is already creaking at the seams. Some would even say it's already burst. Either way, it's a shadow of its former self. Since 2010, central government budget cuts of 40% to the Fire and Rescue Service. Nationally, over 12,000 firefighter posts lost. That's 1 in 5 frontline firefighters. Dozens of fire stations closed, fire engines reduced, and the first engine on scene at arrival at an incident, on average 2 minutes slower than it has been previously. Ask any operational firefighter how a fire can develop in that 2 minutes, and it doesn't give you a happy explanation. The Tory logic for this is that the number of fires has gone down. But firefighters dealt with over 167,000 fires in England alone in 2017-18, the highest number for 4 years. And fires, of course, form less than 50% of the total incidents that we do attend. In any event, it doesn't matter if you have 100 fires in any given geographic location or 50. You still need the same amount of firefighters, the same amount of fire engines to tackle any given incident safely. There are more democratic models of governance that could be related to the Fire and Rescue Service, and there's a debate that needs to take place around which one is the most appropriate. PCCs, however, are not the answer. PCC takeovers of Fire and Rescue Services could also create a backdoor route to privatisation. As in other sectors, we've already witnessed creeping privatisation. The Fire Service College at Morton in Marsh, once a publicly owned, publicly funded, world-renowned centre of excellence used by firefighters from all over the world, taken out of public hands and now run as a private entity. PFI contracts for fire stations and other building stock, tying fire and rescue authorities to extortionate contracts, often in exchange for reduced levels of service. Or in the case of London Fire Brigade some years ago, where the entire operational fleet of fire appliances was owned by a company, Asset Co, who spent as much time in the courtroom as it did in the boardroom before being forced to sell the whole operational fleet to another private entity for £1. The training of firefighters outsourced in some of our biggest brigades to private enterprise. You may think that areas like these are incidental to emergency cover and so therefore less important. But if you followed the Grenfell Tower inquiry, you'll appreciate areas like training are a fundamental concern, not just to the GTI, but to the FBU as well. The previous manifesto vowed to reinstate separate governance arrangements for fire and police, recruit 3,000 new firefighters, and generally invest in the fire and rescue service for the first time in years. And like other sectors, we appreciate being involved in that process in drafting those manifesto commitments. We need to continue to work together to ensure those services currently governed by PCCs continue to work effectively. But when Labour is successful in forming the next UK government, PCCs already running those services need to be removed without disruption and allow all elements of the service to be brought back under full public control. The Fire and Rescue Service has always been about the protection of people. It's never been about the size of the PCC's portfolio, and it should certainly never be about profit. Please support the motion.
Conference, thank you. Gail Cartmail, Unite. Seconding Composite 7. I want to start by asking you to express your solidarity and support with NHS maintenance workers in East Kent on day 2 of their strike against privatisation, against a wholly owned subsidiary. Following the biggest corporate collapse in our country's history, namely Carillion, our UK Defence and Fire Rescue Service has been outsourced to Capita. Conference, what could possibly go wrong? Look at Carillion. Over 3,000 workers lost their jobs and 1,000 more working in its supply chain were thrown on the scrap heap. And when Carillion went under in January, construction sites were deserted. And here in Liverpool, not only did building work stop in January, but the desperately needed new Royal Liverpool Hospital has been mothballed. And it is 18 months overdue this Sunday, and there is still no plan to get it built. First, they found unexplained cracks in the hospital beams, and it's been revealed that the cladding on the building didn't pass fire safety tests. Conference, think about that. Didn't pass fire safety tests. Before Carillion went bust, the Hospital Trust was asked if the cladding was safe, and they said yes. But of course, they lied. And let's face it, Carillion was built on lies. They used so-called aggressive accounting, and projects such as the Royal Liverpool Hospital, which was losing millions, were on paper shown to be in profit. Now, our legal boffins tell me that I can't say Carillion cooked the books, so I won't. But when Carillion went bust, they had liabilities of £7 billion and had just 29 million left in the bank. And the government doled out contracts giving false assurances that all was okay, just as they are with Capita. Then the government said the cost of Carillion's collapse wouldn't be paid by us, the taxpayers. Another lie. The auditors, PwC, will earn £50 million to disband Carillion. And Unite has discovered that because Carillion went into compulsory liquidation and all its workers had to be made redundant and lose their continuity of employment, even if their jobs were transferred, We, the taxpayers, have picked up that bill of another £65 million. Despite the millions we paid, despite the lies, despite the misery of workers losing their jobs, no one has been charged. And if nobody broke any laws, we need new laws. Someone has to be guilty here. And conference, we need to be angry about the corporate thieves stealing taxpayers' money. But more than that, conference, we need justice and accountability, and we know that only a Labour government will outlaw bandit capitalism once and for all. Let's get Jeremy into number 10 and pledge to use our public money for public good. Thank you, conference.
Conference will now consider the reference back, which have been notified to the CAC, which is in the name of Thirsk and Moulton CLP. They wish to refer back to the section on climate change, renewables and low-carbon energy on page 51 of the National Policy Forum report. Could I ask the delegate from Thirsk and Moulton to come forward? You have 1 minute.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Conference. I've got a minute to persuade you to support my reference back. The thing I'm talking about is 3 paragraphs right at the end of the chapter on environment, energy and culture, under the general heading, Other Stuff, which kind of tells you what the problem is. Fracking is a major issue, and it has not been properly reflected in this report. I'm moving reference back because the report does not develop policy, and even more seriously, it ignores formal submissions from several CLPs calling for a national campaign against fracking. Conference, we have a great policy on climate change. Announced 2 years ago at this conference by Barry Gardner, a comprehensive green energy strategy, including a ban on fracking. But
delegate, time.
Is that it?
That's it, you
Okay, you can help put this right by supporting my reference back, but I'm also asking the Commission to call an urgent meeting of frontline CLPs to discuss how we can get a national campaign against fracking moving now.
Conference, we're now going to take speakers, and could I remind you, if you are called to go to the speaker's desk to be identified, and obviously tell us your name and the organisation at the start of your contribution. Could I also ask that you all remain in your seats as have been previously directed, and just raise your hands. So we are going to start, down at the front. I'll take them in threes. Over on the left, the woman in the mustard top, yep. Over there in the blue suit and the, yep.
Conference, Tony Cairns, Communication Workers Union, and despite the accents, also a member of Kingston and Surbiton Constituency Labour Party. CW's position to support the composite, but make it clear. CW's NEC made a decision to remain, recommend to our members remain, and we did that in full knowledge that we would probably lose members, and we know we did. But one of the things we campaigned for was remain and reform, and the last paragraph talks about the democratisation of European institutions. Because what we saw in the competition in the postal area It paved the way for privatisation. And that can't take place anymore. You've had the debate here, Dave Prentice talked about privatisation in public services, and that has to stop. So the approach has to change. And what took place in 2016 isn't the reality of today. This is a rapidly moving debate, and it becomes a matter of political judgment, and we believe that the composite gives the leadership the space, as Keir Starmer said. But the reality is we're not in control of those negotiations. The Conservatives are, and it's a mess. But here's our role, as we see it in the Communication Workers Union. Our role is to unite the country. Our role in this hall is to unite affiliates, CLPs and trade unions, and we believe the motion does exactly that. And we don't believe it's about a straight second referendum, not a rerun of the same arguments, the same rhetoric, the same hostility and the same divisions we saw in our communities. It's not a Tory Brexit or a status quo as far as we're concerned. And when Keir says the option about Remain, we need to be clear, as Tim Roach pointed out, about the anger that took place in 2016 was an anger against the political elite in this country. And that is why it's important to repeat the reform of the EU is implicit in that final paragraph. Listen, John McDonnell talked about our friends in the media, or as we like to call them in the CW, Tory propagandists. They're going to spin whatever comes out of this to suit their narrative. We see the motion is correct. It talks about the fear that workers have. It talks about the fear that workers have to be worried about their future. In ports, in food, in pharmaceuticals, manufacturing industry, chemicals, public services. Beyond Brexit, that's a real fear. But we heard in debates yesterday on education, on public services, on NHS, on care, about food banks, about universal credits, and about the economy we need, a new deal for workers. The problem is these fears are now and they're real and we need to address them. So our focus needs to be, when this government fails the people, which it surely will, that we unite CLPs and trade unions. If I can misquote Corinthians, when I was a child, my dad, a postal worker in this city, dragged me down to deliver leaflets for the Labour Party. And he taught me, I think, to hate the Tories. And now I'm a man. What I realised he didn't tell me was how much to hate the Tories. So here's the message. We demand our rights at work. Get the Tories out.
Hi, GEMMA BOLTON, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. So, many people here have been calling for a people's vote. I think a true people's vote is a general election. Our party leadership have said we are not calling for another referendum. We've had a referendum. We know there are different views, but we must respect that referendum. Theresa May is a lame duck, unable to take forward the negotiations successfully. She is failing us, the people. We need a deal that works for us, not a deal just to keep peace in the Tory party. And certainly not some of our MPs backing that deal. Our MPs must oppose a deal that does not achieve the 6 tests set out by Keir Starmer. He's not there anymore. A deal that does not meet those tests would be such a threat to jobs, to incomes, to our economy and to our futures that the only way forward is a general election. That we can win, that we must win, and comrades, that we will win. Conference, we all know how divisive the first referendum was. Do you honestly think that a second will achieve anything different? Why tie our hands now? All options should remain on the table until we know the direction that we are going. Comrades, please support our leadership. Please support this motion. Thank you.
I will take 3 more. This is really difficult trying to select somebody. Right, at the back right with the yellow and white, red and white sheet holding up. Yep. Point of order. Point of order is the waving something. It's a fair point of order. So raise your hands, not your booklets. Thank you. The steward on the right, holding his hand up. Yep. Steward on the right, yep. Who's waving at me, yeah. And down the front.
Chair, Conference, Manuel Cortez, Transport Salaried Staffs Association. Very proud to be here supporting this motion. You know, the Tories have been having an argument with each other for the last 2 years over Brexit. And we are going to leave this hall today united behind our leader, Jeremy Corbyn, and Keir Starmer. And we're going to give those Tories a bloody nose, because this kamikaze government has to end, and the sooner the better. They cannot be trusted with our future. And of course, remember when Boris said, we can have our cake and eat it Brexit. What could possibly go wrong? We've been lied. And now we are having to face up to the reality. And let's be candid with the British people, because negotiating any future relationship with the European Union ain't going to be easy. And it's not going to be cost-free either. We need to start having a debate with people that there's going to have to be compromises all around. And one of the compromises must probably is going to have to be, if we're going to keep our place within the single market, it's going to have to be keeping freedom of movement going forward. I think there is no point in hiding to people some of the debates that we're going to have to have going forward. You know, I want a Labour government as soon as we can get one. I wake up every morning, and before I go to bed at night, I look at what I have done that day to try and bring this shower down. And I wake up the next morning thinking what I'm going to be doing that day to bring them down. And I'm sure everybody in this hall is united around this. But look, this is not going to be easy. But let me just say this to you as well, and I'm going to finish on this. Jacob Rees-Mogg, he's let the cat out of the bag. He said it was going to take us 50 years to reap the benefits of Brexit. Well, I don't know about you. I will be 6 foot under in 50 years. And perhaps for somebody like him, who is 3 centuries behind the rest of us, 50 years may not seem like a long time. But for each and every one of us, for our children, for our grandchildren, 50 years is an eternity and something that we can't tolerate. So look, let's get behind our leadership and let's get that general election and Jeremy Corbyn into number 10. Thank you.
Caroline Mallow, Stourbridge CLP. Again, I'm sorry. I want to clear a few things up from that compositing meeting. I understand that for members of the press and for the Tories, it may be difficult to understand what good negotiations look like. But This composite was put together with give and take from all sides, and it is something that I am truly proud to have been a part of. I'm also proud of the composite itself, which leaves our leadership free to make the fast-paced decisions needed while still showing that the Labour Party is always putting what's best for the United Kingdom first. Now, if Mrs May and Mr Raab would like to come to a Labour meeting to see good negotiations, I'm sure they're more than welcome. And I promise we're not going to charge them as much for that lesson as they would charge us to go to university. In fact, I'll even give everyone here a free taster of how the Labour Party works. It was not just key delegates in that compositing meeting. It was every delegate with an accepted motion on Brexit. I am a working mum from Stourbridge. I'm not special. And Stourbridge is not exactly strategically placed or particularly wealthy, although we do have a fantastic PPC in Pete Lowe. But I was able to be a part of this historic meeting and have my CLP's input put forward, because that is what the Labour Party is truly about. Normal people making the right decisions for the many and not for the few.
Three more speakers. Could I ask that if you have spoken once already, you do share it out a bit? And we have obviously people who haven't spoken at this conference before. So, right, we're going to go in the middle. Gentleman with a purple shirt on. Yep. Yep. On the left, at the front. And at the back, the woman with in the red with black. Yep.
Thanks, Chair. Conference. Tosh MacDonald, President of ASLEF, at the conference for last time as President of ASLEF and the first time as a Labour councillor for Doncaster Town Ward. I come here, conference, to support Composite 6. But I will say this is the first conference I've been to where, in the interest of trade union discipline and unity, I have sat on my hands a bit. Just want to make one thing clear. I don't have to sit on my hands on this debate, because I believe we will get a Labour government, and I believe Jeremy Corbyn, Keir Starmer and our fantastic shadow cabinet that will become a cabinet can get us a deal that the Tories can't get, and will get us a deal that meets the 6 criteria. Now, to where I am. Sometimes you have to go backwards to look forward. And I want to talk about nearly 40 years ago when I started work on the railway. And everything was in public ownership. We didn't have to worry about where contracts went. Every day we moved coal from a pit to a power station, and we owned that pit. We had no privateers to pay. The workers at that pit were represented by a union, and they had collective bargaining. We moved it on trains, on a railway that we owned, where the workers were represented by trade unions and had collective bargaining. We moved it to power stations that we owned, and the workers were represented by trade unions and we had collective bargaining. The power that was created was distributed by us, for us, to places where it was needed, not where the greatest profit was. You know, it went to schools that we owned. It went to hospitals that we owned. It went to houses that we had built, and we gave long, secure tenancies to people, and we maintained with direct labour. We used gas, we used electricity, we used water, and we owned it all. There was no parasites milking stuff out of it. That's when I started in 79, and we were moving forward. It was great from where we'd come from nationalisation, and we were getting better and better. But you know, a month before I started work, Thatcher was elected as Prime Minister. And I say this many times, and it's still true. I hated her. I wish I could be like Jeremy and rise above it, but I can't. And I did hate her that much that I did set my alarm clock an hour earlier than I needed, just so I could hate her for an hour longer. Now, since she died, I don't do that anymore. I just set my alarm at the right time, but I still wake up an hour earlier. I can't help it. But this is the simplest way to ensure that we don't have to worry about where government contracts go, where public contracts go. We do it ourselves. We don't have the privateers milking money out of our industry, out of our economy. It all comes into our economy, and it helps to make one thing work against another. When we're investing in water, we don't put the bills up to pay for it. We take the money from another public service that is making profit for us and invest that way. Instead of coming to people and saying, we've got to put your bills up so we can make a more efficient service to make us more money, we make it better for all of us. Public ownership. I am so pleased. We're in a Labour Party with a Labour leadership and a shadow cabinet, the best shadow or cabinet I've seen in a Labour Party in my lifetime. And I will just finish on this, comrades. I'll finish on this. It might be a surprise to some of you, but some of the Labour leaders we've had weren't my first choice. But I never worked against any of them. None of them. I accepted the decision, and I call on all Labour Party members, whether it's the 0.04% in Parliament or the 500,000 plus that we have in this country. And I'm going to ask one last thing before I get down. Let's not refer to people as ordinary anymore, or some of the worst things that some parliamentary party members have called us, chucker. Let's not refer to people as ordinary, because in my life, and certainly within our party and our movement, I have never met one ordinary person in my life. Every one of you is extraordinary. Support the composite.
Thank you, comrades. My name is Raj Gill from Ealing, Central and Acton CLP. I'd like to say I'm encouraged by the words of Cam Starmer when he talk about internationalism. I'm also encouraged by his words that he's not leaving Remain as an option. So I will declare my intent. I voted Remain, and I am a Remainer. I'd like to say, as an ex-automotive worker, car worker, and a truck worker, I worked at Ford for 14 years. And I was a leading shop steward for the Transport and General Worker Union. Now, what I'd like to say to you might interest you, that Ford manufacturing took their kit operation to Spain. Part of that operation went to Portugal. Fiat who took over part of cargo truck manufacturing, took their manufacturing back to Italy. Now, they didn't do that because they are part of some kind of a foreign organization. They took their companies to part of the world, which happened to be in Europe, to a place where there was cheap labor, where they could make a great profit. Now, our interest, that's the interest of the working class, interest of the socialists, is common interest. Whether it's in a deprived area of Britain or any part of Europe, we got the same issues, we got the same problems. So we cannot give in to any kind of a racism or bigotry, because the fascism in certain part of Europe is on the rise. We gave solidarity to the Spanish workers when they fought Franco, fascism, international solidarity. We fought the fascists in Germany through international solidarity. So we have a common interest with the workers of European workers as with the interests of the working class in Britain. So I say this, what we need to do, we need to ensure that the bad aspects of EU, which is not in the interest of the working class, we have to reform. We have to get rid. We have to democratize the European Union. But at the same time, we have to ensure that any successive government will put the interests of British people in trying to keep the jobs which we had in Britain. Gillette went to Poland. Why did Gillette go to Poland after many, many decades in Britain? So what I'm saying, we need to be part of the European Union. We cannot rule it out. So comrade, international solidarity to all of the working class and trade union movement.
Joshua Lewis, Cardiff North CLP. Point of order for the Chair. I would just ask the Chair and following chairs to respect the precedent that was set at Brighton Conference last year in not using gendered language when calling delegates to the stage. So please refrain from using pronouns and just use delegate. Thank you.
Conference Chair Javad Khan speaking on behalf of GMB. Now, at our conferences, we discuss lots of important topics, but don't always join the dots between them. So I'd like to briefly talk about our union's concerns about what Brexit could do to insecure work. First of all, I am so proud that my union, GMB, has been at the forefront of standing up for workers in the gig economy and on insecure contracts. We have stood up to Uber, to Hermes, and now we are taking the fight to Amazon to improve conditions and ensure people can exercise their full rights at work. It might look like David versus Goliath, but you know what? David actually won. The problem of insecure work is so widespread. It is about the cynical use of agency contracts to hire and fire at short notice. It is about short and zero-hour contracts where the flexibility is always with the boss more than the worker. The Tories have allowed this to continue and refuse to take sufficient action. They defend the indefensible. GMB's experience is that the Tories' chaotic and reckless approach to Brexit risks making a bad situation even worse. There are workplaces in manufacturing which traditionally have provided decent, secure employment. Now some are now trying to use agencies much more than before. GMB is fighting this, but the Tory approach to Brexit means some employers don't even know how they will be running their businesses in 6 months' time. GMB believes the Tory approach to Brexit is going to be bad for a wide range of sectors in the economy, and jobs could soon be put at risk. And you know who is always first out the door? Insecure workers on agency and temporary contracts, and those with no guaranteed hours. Conference, no one voted for this in 2016. That is why we must do everything we can to stop a hard Tory Brexit which undermines our workers, and it is why we need Labour into government and in power as soon as possible to implement a manifesto of union and employment rights which our country desperately needs. The only insecure workers I want to see in this country are the Tories in government. Thank you.
Conference, Bryn Jones, Bath CLP, which is right next door to the constituency of someone called Jacob Rees-Mogg, which puts us in a very handy position for going over and asking embarrassing questions about what he's doing with his investments, i.e. taking them out of the EU in order to safeguard his own position, even when everyone else suffers. Comrades, I want to make 3 brief points. And that they all concern caution on these calls for a people's vote, a referendum. And I'm sure our leadership will have this in their mind, but we also need to consider it so we don't get trapped into criticising them for a sellout. The 3 points are, firstly, we will not, as a party, be in charge, be able to decide the wording of the referendum. The Tory government still will have enough votes to phrase the referendum in such a way that it will not serve either the interests of Remain or the kind of Brexit deal that we want. Second point, even if a people's vote or a referendum goes ahead, the consequences for our party and our chances of government could be quite dangerous. There would be a risk. There would be a risk if it was a close result, and depending on the wording of the successful option chosen in the referendum, there is a risk that it could continue the split in the country, continue the split amongst our voters, our supporters, and continue and worsen the split in our party. And therefore, comrades, I'm saying and asking our leadership to make this a really well thought out, considered option if they want to choose it. What we want is not, as speakers have said, what we want is not a referendum, is not a people's vote, because that does not give us the opportunity to put in practice our policies. Our overriding objective must be a general election and the return of a Labour government under Jeremy Corbyn. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take 3 more speakers, then we're going to move on to Rebecca's speech, but we will be able to continue with the debate this afternoon. So, down on the front. Yep, in the middle. Yep. Yes, you pointing at yourself. Which one? They've both got up. Is it the woman in black or the chap here? No, this one. Yes, tell the woman. And then I'll take one right at the back, the delegate, holding his right arm up with his left hand because he's had his hand up in the air that long.
Conference. My name is Barbara Pezzini. I am a delegate for Maidstone and the Will CLP, a member of the National Union for Journalists. I'm a first-time delegate and I'm a first-time speaker. I am here to ask you to support the motion on Brexit. My CLP, which is sited in a Leave area, and in the past 2 years has been not just sitting on the fence, has been glued to the fence, in this whole Brexit debate, gave me an almost unanimous mandate to come here and support a public vote. Conference, you will know the statistics that 86% of Labour Party members now support a public vote. In fact, according to the latest YouGov polling, Labour would gain 1.5 million votes and 60 new seats if it supported a public vote. In Maidstone and the Weald, where 76% voted to leave the EU, we have observed a similar mood swing in the local press and on the doorstep. Maidstone voters supported Brexit as an ideal and a protest, but now are experiencing what the reality of this disastrous story Brexit looks like. The reality is very different. We are living a poorer and more precarious life. We demand a new say on this. And this say should not exclude preserving our relationship with the European Union and an option to remain. Conference, Maidstone plays it safe. And when a town that has been represented in Parliament by arch-conservatives, such as Benjamin Disraeli and Anne Widdecombe, a town that has always been, even within party politics, a cautious player, when Maidstone CLP mandates me nearly unanimously in support for a public vote, it definitely means that the mood in the country is changing. Let's stop sitting on the fence. Please, Conference, support the motion on Brexit. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Conference. Steve Turner, Unite, standing in support of Composite 5. Conference, in less than 6 months we leave the European Union, and that is a result of the outcome of the 2016 referendum, and we have to respect it. We have to recognise that while a majority of Labour voters and trade unionists may have voted to remain, many didn't. Across our nations, millions feel abandoned in a rapidly changing world and betrayed by a political elite that doesn't speak to or for them. Millions feel left behind in communities starved of investment and battered by years of austerity, often working in poverty, exploited by greedy bosses lining their own pockets from our misery, while the next generation of our young people are robbed of hope and the opportunities they so desperately desire. Conference, a perfect storm has divided our nations, and it's our job, our duty to make history and step up to create the climate and conditions to deliver a socialist Labour government. Because, Conference, only Labour can remove the Tory red lines and encourage constructive engagement to secure access to the single market and membership of a customs union that protects our jobs and investments. Only Labour has the values to protect long fought for protections for citizens, consumers and our environment. Only Labour can secure a deal that protects the peace in Northern Ireland and ensures no restrictions between Gibraltar and Spain. Only Labour will end the austerity, build the homes we so desperately need, invest in public services, regulate the labour market and end the gross exploitation of migrant workers. Conference, a Brexit without Labour's answers to what are genuine fears and concerns will only add to deep-rooted crisis of belonging and identity in our nations, something that's already fuelling a growing and very dangerous far right. Conference, we demand a Brexit that works for the many, not the few. So when the Tories return from Brussels with no deal or a deal that fails our tests, that's our moment. That's our moment to demand they step aside, our moment to send a broken government back to the country in a general election. And Conference, if the Tory benches aren't brave enough to do that, to stand up themselves to the Johnson Moggs of this world, if they fail us, we demand they go back to the people with a vote on the deal. And Conference, that is not a second referendum. Despite what Keir may have said earlier, it's a public vote on the terms of our departure. Conference, we desperately need a better, fairer society. We need to heal the wounds of Brexit, not reopen them. And only our movement, united with a proud socialist Labour government, is capable of doing that. Support the composite.
Point of order.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to say, we've got a great mass movement here and there's so many amazing delegates here to speak that it's quite a confusing way of picking speakers, and I think it might be worth an idea for the Conference Arrangements Committee next year to review that, perhaps some sort of name out of the hat or something.
We'll certainly consider it. Thank you.
Yep. Good afternoon, Conference. First of all, I'd like to say that, yes, this is my second time speaking, but I feel that Brexit is an important thing to bring up, especially for my constituency. I am against having a people's vote on the basis that in my constituency we voted overwhelmingly to leave. And my worry is if we go against the people's will, we'll lose those voters. I implore you all, come to Blythe Valley, go to Bowes Court where the buildings are crumbling behind St Wilfrid's Catholic Church, tell them why you want us to remain. Go to Coopin Ward, tell them why you want us to remain, and go to Kitty Brewster, when for too long they have felt marginalised, like they have not had their voices heard. I personally would have voted Remain at the time, but now I am against it because I believe the European Union to be a capitalist club that is for the few, not the many. It uses free trade to take advantage of those who are in Eastern Europe, Poles, Romanians, who come over for a better life, and our wages are undercut because the bosses think because of the European Union they can pay them less. This is a complete and utter farce. We must work to actually improve our nation for all the people in this country, European migrants. I am not against Europe. I myself am a European. I am a third-generation Polish refugee family from Poland, expelled because of the German minority. My family were Germans living in Poland. They were expelled after the war. They came to Britain for a better life, and they got the exact same rights because they were in a union with other British workers. They got the same pay because they were in a union. And since Thatcher brought in free trade in Europe, that is when things went downhill. So I implore you, we need a general election, not a people's vote. We need the Tories out so we can get a man like Jeremy Corbyn to negotiate, because I've seen videos of Michel Barnier and Corbyn being friendlier than he is with David Davies or Dominic Raab or whatever his name is. But I tell you what, Corbyn will negotiate far better than what these Tories can do. And so please, push for a general election, not a people's vote. Thank you.
Bruce Hogan, Forester Dean CLP, and haven't I drawn the short straw trying to follow that? I'd just like to say that, in a way, I'm going to swim against the tide here, because I don't believe a people's vote is somehow undemocratic, and somehow a general election is. If we call a general election, we're not going to be respecting the right of the result of the last general election. We're going to try and change it. Now, how many people in this hall can honestly say that they didn't know somebody, a friend, a colleague, a family member, who voted to leave in the referendum, who since hasn't changed their mind and wishes dearly that they'd voted Remain? Overwhelmingly, in the time since that red bus drove around with the biggest red lie on the side of it, hundreds of thousands of people in this country have changed their minds and realised that they were conned. Asking them to reconsider is not anti-democratic. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to be supporting this motion. And I dearly hope that we get a general election sooner rather than later to see this principled man sitting in 10 Downing Street. It will be the proudest day of my life if that happens. But don't swallow the hogwash that asking the people, is that what you really meant, is somehow anti-democratic. Thank you, Conference.
Conference, just to remind you again that we will be taking speakers on this debate after the lunch break. All votes on this morning's business will be taken this afternoon, and Conference, we will shortly be hearing from Rebecca Long-Bailey, but first we've got a video. Conference, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Long-Bailey, MP, Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy.
Conference. There's a saying that if Liverpool did not exist, it would have to be invented. And I think that captures the energy, creativity and eternal pride and solidarity of this city. But in today's Britain, that energy is being held back. I don't need to tell you here in Liverpool about the Tories and managed decline. But sometimes it feels as if managed decline is the Tories' plan for the entire country. We have a government overwhelmed by the process of Brexit with no idea about the type of country they actually want to live in. On all the big questions, the economy, climate change, inequality, what our working lives will look like, this government has simply nothing to offer. Time and time again, they've ignored the concerns of businesses such as Jaguar Land Rover and Airbus, who know the looming catastrophe we face if we crash out without securing a good deal. We also know the Tories can't be trusted. We know that they'll use Brexit as a cover to roll back on our hard-won workers' rights. Eight years of Tory government has seen insecurity in the workplace become the norm, and many workers don't have access to basic employment rights. Laura Pidcock, our Shadow Minister for Labour Rights, Justin Madders, her maternity cover, and Bambos Chavalambos, my PPS, have forensically held this government to account. But they don't care. They don't care about the tragic stories of gig workers, sick, stressed and underpaid. They don't even care about staff in their own departments of justice and business campaigning today simply for basic protections and a living wage. We care. Workers under Labour will get full legal rights such as sick pay, holiday and parental leave and protection from dismissal from day one, even those working in the gig economy. But this precariousness extends beyond employment rights. Over 3 years, there have been 100,000 job losses in retail alone, one of our biggest employment sectors. Thriving high streets were once the centre of community, somewhere local people were proud of. But once flourishing businesses are now replaced by boarded-up shops, with almost 25,000 vacant retail and leisure premises across Great Britain. Household names such as Toys R Us and Macklin have disappeared, and big brands like New Look and M&S are closing stores across the country. The move to online retail and the changing nature of the way we shop doesn't need to mean empty high streets and job losses. It can mean vibrant community space with local independent shops, cafes and restaurants. But that will require governmental action to reinvigorate our high streets. Now, some of that action will be long-term changes, such as addressing the imbalance of tax treatment between traditional retailers and online sellers. And that's why my colleague Bill Esterson is convening a cross-departmental task force to look into these complex issues. And Roberta Blackman-Woods will also be leading a planning commission which will enable Labour to create policies that will revitalise our high streets, tackle climate change and environmental protection, as well as giving communities a stronger voice to shape their areas. Together, these working groups will develop a long-term strategy for our high streets. But some actions can be done immediately. Today, I am announcing Labour's emergency 5-point plan to save Britain's high streets. The next Labour government will ban ATM charges and stop post office and bank branch closures. And I want to thank one of our fantastic new MPs, Jed Killen, for championing this issue in Parliament through his private members' bill. We'll also provide free bus travel for under 25s, deliver free public Wi-Fi in town centres, establish a register of landlords of empty shops in each local authority, and finally, And one of the most pressing issues, business rates. We will introduce annual revaluations of rates, exempt new forms of plant and machinery from revaluations, ensure a fair appeals system, and fundamentally review the business rate system to bring it into the 21st century. You see, it's only Labour that has the energy, the ideas and the courage to challenge the big issues and shape the world as we would like to see it. We just don't accept that decline is inevitable, that productivity and wage stagnation is normal, that critical industries such as steel and manufacturing don't need support, or that it's acceptable somehow for public and private investment to be around 4% below the developed country average. My brilliant colleagues, Chi Onwurah and Jill Furness, have already championed necessary investment to support industry, from research and development through to infrastructure and skills. We've stated that under Labour, public procurement will support homegrown supply chains and support strategic industries. And whilst we'll bring as many public contracts back in-house as possible, we cannot reverse overnight the Tories' devastating cuts to the capacity of the civil service and local government. We must and we will rebuild our public services. And we must and we will set out a bold industrial strategy with missions to deal with the big societal issues of our time. Now, perhaps one of the biggest issues we face, which the market has proven uniquely incapable of addressing, is climate change. The debate is over. The superstorms of the last fortnight are further evidence that our climate is changing and that the consequences are severe. 10 years ago, a Labour government passed the Climate Change Act, world-leading legislation binding the government to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% before 2050. But 10 years later, the science is clear. We need to go further and faster to avoid dangerous climate change. Now, my colleagues Alan Whitehead and Barry Gardiner magnificently show up the Tories' rhetoric. The truth is the Tories are way off track to meet our current targets. We acknowledge that the UK needs to do much more to meet the Paris Agreement goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees. So today, I state very firmly that a Labour government will back a target for net zero emissions by 2050. And you know, that's just the start, because targets aren't enough. We need a plan of action. And we've got one. We've been working with an expert team of energy professionals and engineers supported by leading academics. They've looked at Labour's mission to provide 60% of the UK's energy demand from renewable or low-carbon sources within 12 years. They've asked, can it be done? How can it be done? And with what consequences for our climate and economy? And yes, it can be done, offering profound economic opportunity to revive our productivity and reshape our economy. Now, this is just a little taster in the time that I've got. The report recommends a diverse energy mix. One part, harnessing the best offshore wind prospect in the world to deliver a 7-fold increase in offshore wind power. Now, that's over 7,000 turbines, a massive 52 gigawatts, enough to power 12 million homes. They propose doubling onshore wind power and almost tripling solar power, and together that's enough to power over 7 million homes. And the report proposes making every single house in the UK a warm, dry, energy-efficient home, eliminating fuel poverty. Conference George Harrison once said, "It's being here now that's important. We can hope for the future, but we don't know if there is one." So this is not the time for piecemeal measures. We don't have to settle for whatever the market can deliver and sleepwalk into catastrophe, because we can unleash the energy of the wind and the waves and of our extraordinary people who've been criminally neglected through this country's long deindustrialisation. Because for Labour, this is about boosting the fundamental quality of life for millions of people. This is about reinvigorating our towns and communities so that they truly symbolise local pride and prosperity. This is about kick-starting an industrial revolution with workers and unions at its heart, one that is built in Britain and that can rebuild Britain. And by doing so, we can reclaim the future. Thank you, Conference.
Thanks, Rebecca. Conference that takes care of this morning's business will now adjourn for lunch back at 2:15. Thank you.